Stuck on your backstory? Maybe just not sure if it's any good? Sometimes I wish there was some kind of mathematical method to check whether or not I wrote a good enough backstory. Some way of showing my work so that I know there is stuff in there for a DM to use if they like it. Have you heard of knife theory? Welcome to Mystic Arts, where this week we're pivoting away from DM advice and we're making a video for players. My name is Daði, I'm a professional writer and director, and I've been DMing for over a decade. Ginny D made this video where she got people on Fiverr to write backstories for her character. It's a great watch. I saw that she had these sword-shaped earrings because there's this running gag that she always carries a sword, but I thought at first that they were knives and that she was going to talk about knife theory, and then she didn't. And I realized it's entirely possible that not everyone knows about the best Reddit post in RPG history. So maybe some random YouTube idiot should make a video about that. Oh hey, I'm a random YouTube idiot. 9 years ago, a Reddit user called JimBaby wrote a post on Reddit called "My friends and I have something called knife theory," and I've been sending this post to my players ever since. It's brilliant. I'll link the original post in the description, as well as OP's actual play series, I Seduce the Dragon, where an all-women group played D&D together. If you like this theory, go check both of those out and say thanks. Knife theory posits that players making backstories are in the process of lovingly forging a knife to hand over to the DM, allowing the DM to then stab their player over and over again with said knife as the player goes, "Oh no, I never thought this would come to haunt me. What can be done?" The purpose of knife theory is to give us a language to talk about unresolved threads from your backstory, something that can come into play in the campaign to haunt you. In this example, a knife is essentially just a thing that could come back to stab you. It is something unresolved. If you write a backstory about a rich merchant who hated you and had all your friends killed, and over the course of the backstory you killed the merchant in revenge, and now nobody haunts you, then what you've done is crafted a knife, stabbed yourself, and then shattered the knife forevermore. That's not a useful backstory. It's not a knife. But if the rich merchant tried to have you killed, and you escaped, and now you're on the run, hiding from this NPC who may one day find you, that's a knife.
That's a knife.
So what are knives? Well, OP says, here, let me show you the original post. The more knives a player has, the easier it is for the DM to involve them in the story. And then it's got this bullet list of knives that you can just, add to your backstory or sort of use as a way to mathematically decide, does my character have enough knives? Every named person your character cares about, living or dead, phobia or trauma your character experiences, mystery in your character's life, enemy your character has, any ongoing obligation or loyalty your character has, obligation your character has failed, every serious crime your character has committed, every crime your character is falsely accused of. You don't even have to be a criminal, you could just be accused of being a criminal, right? That knife is the cops are after you, or someone is going to get revenge for a crime you didn't commit. If you're a serial killer or the leader of the Thieves Guild, that's sort of one big knife. The author never described small knives. I don't think it's actually meant to be mathematically anything. It's just a way to sort of think about these bullet points, how you can add them to your backstory. Discrimination you faced, favored item or heirloom. I'd never part with this ring, you say. Okay, how is that useful as a backstory? Well, what if the DM decides, hey, someone is willing to do this if you part with that ring. They like the ring, they're going to do you a favor if you give them the ring. Every secret your character is keeping, the DM can go expose your secrets. They can invoke the trauma, add to the mystery, have your enemies show up, have your obligation challenge you. Each of these things is something the DM can then sort of play with. By adding this to your backstory, you're giving the DM permission, and you're saying, hey, if you use these things, I will behave as though they matter to me. I think that's really brilliant. I honestly love this idea, and if you're a DM, you just have to remember to be okay with using the knives that the players have given you. I found just looking at this list gets me thinking. Which knife in the examples should I use? What fits my character concept? Did I wrong someone? Have I faced discrimination? Am I keeping secrets? Do I fail obligations? Which knives I forge does a lot of characterization for me. It's a foundation on which to build my character's personality. I think you can tell a lot about a person based on their flaws, the chips on their shoulder, what they're anxious about. I think it's all very informative. I send my players this post because it's incredibly useful for me if they understand the idea of writing backstories is all about giving me, the DM, knives. A backstory without any knives cannot be meaningfully integrated by the DM into a campaign's narrative. because there is nothing there to integrate. My character comes from a happy family and now wants to see the world is a perfectly acceptable backstory, provided that the player and the DM both understand that it won't come up. Knives give DMs a tool. And it's a great tool because there have been times when I don't have content for a session, no dungeon on the horizon, no big exploration planned by the party, but I know I can open up my drawer of knives to see if there's something suitable to stab the players with. But how do you guarantee there is enough stabbing implements? The author of the post suggests about 7 knives. That's basically enough variety without being so many knives that your PC's knives start stabbing the other players. I want to extrapolate on one more point the author put into what I still think is the best Reddit post in RPG history. You kind of get the point. Any part of your backstory that could be used against you is considered a knife. A skilled DM will use these knives to get your character and get you invested in the story. A really good DM can break your knives into smaller, sharper knives with which to stab you. They can bundle different characters' knives together. You were falsely accused of a crime, you actually committed a crime, you are the leader of the Thieves Guild. I'm now gonna have this one super cool cop or paladin or something show up and stab you all with the same knife. And here's the bit I wanted to especially highlight. On the other hand, you don't want to be a sad edgelord with too many knives. A buttload of knives just means that everyone in your party gets stabbed by your knives, and eventually that gets annoying. Anything over 15 knives seems excessive. I agree. You also don't want to be the plain boring character with only 2 knives. It means the DM has to work harder to give you a personal stake in the story you're telling together. Also, knives are cool. Get more knives. There's nothing stopping a DM from making a knife, or from taking something in your backstory and just extrapolating on it until it becomes a knife. But that is a lot of work. And the reason I think 7 knives is a pretty good yardstick is because the DM only needs 3. But if you only provide 3, it might be that those 3 can't come up. Maybe there is no window for a paladin or a priest or a cop or someone to chase down the criminals in the party. Maybe the DM just doesn't have that in them, or isn't interested in running that kind of story, or you're out in the middle of the wilderness and you don't think it fits. Well, if all the knives are like that, you can't really use them. So it's important to have bonus knives, more knives than are needed, which is why I think 7 is a pretty good pick, because that way, no matter where you are or what's going on, where you are in the story, what's happening, the DM is going to be able to pick one of your collection of knives to grab and stab. I always try to incorporate at least 7 knives into my character's backstory, and so far the return has been a stabbity good time. Going back into my previous characters, says OP, I've noticed that fewer knives present in my backstory has correlated with fewer direct consequences for my character in-game. Of course, not a hard and fast rule, it's just something that me and my friends have come up with to help with character creation. Right, with all of these things, they're just tools for you to use, they're just something to try. The comments here are very insightful, including lots from the original poster. I recommend you go check out the thread. This video is brought to you by HARPY, a service that lets you play your way, whether that's Theater of the Mind, or 3D virtual tabletop with Hero Forge minis, or asynchronously with Play by Post. It lets you build your world and everything around it using random tables, sheets, dialects, maps, tokens. It's system agnostic, so you can play any game you want. The whole thing is community driven. You can vote on roadmaps and shape the future of the platform. It works on all devices, mobile, tablet, and desktop. It's available in 16 languages, and it is built by a solo indie developer. If all of that sounds good to you, you should go check it out. The entire dataset, 90% of the features are free, so you can just try them out. If you like them, there's a $10 a month fee to access all of the features. So if you're looking for a way to build your world and play together in any way you like, on any game you like, HARPY is the place to start. Click the link in the description so they know who sent you. Matt Colville made a video about backstories some months ago, saying that in effect, backstories are for players what world building is for DMs. It's not mandatory for everyone else to remember or understand. In the film industry, we'd call this background, as in it's work that a creative does that is beyond the scope of the picture. An actor might work on fabricating a background for their character based on the text in the script, elaborating on it in a way that might never come up. In fact, it usually doesn't come up, but it informs the actor's choices with how they play their character. And it is more than just the actor who does this kind of work. Production design, concept art, visual effects, they all do this kind of work. Aragorn's armor was designed as though he lived in it. It was important to Viggo and the costume designers that it looked like it had everything he needed to survive in the wild. A dagger, some string, a small purse, all that stuff. Gandalf's staff has a place to keep his pipe. It's not important to the film, it doesn't show up in the script, but if you look, it's there. Samwise takes Frodo's hand at the end. That was in the books, but not in the script, and they made sure to keep it in at Ian McKellen's suggestion because it informs the relationship between Sam and Frodo. But those things aren't the story about good versus evil. The evil in man and carrying on fighting against impossible circumstances in a world full of reckless hate. And it certainly has nothing to do with the plot of destroying the ring through a secret mission by taking the ring into enemy lands carried by the unlikeliest heroes imaginable. But those kinds of moments, those kinds of details, is what makes the trilogy so iconic. They are what elevated beyond the ordinary fantasy fodder. You don't need backstories. They're not essential. I've played countless characters with little to no backstory, and I believed in them. I found the details as I played. My favorite character ever had no stakes in the adventure. No knives I had given the DM I couldn't have. This was my West Marches character in a long-running campaign. We made a video about West Marches if you're interested, but for that character, I had some notes on who I was. My name was Walter. I was a nobleman's son who wanted to learn spellcasting, so I went adventuring. Because I figured all the world's greatest wizards were once adventurers. And yeah, that's it. There were half a dozen DMs running actively in that campaign with around 50 players, so there was no way every DM would be able to work with that backstory. But they didn't need to. I had a blast. I didn't need more. It was my job to understand my character. It was my job to bring my own investment to the campaign and the character, and it worked. Over time in the adventure, I sold my soul to a Sararak for a magic item, and then I learned of evil wizards in the wilderness studying lichdom, so I figured, hey, if I became a lich, I don't ever have to give my soul to a Sararak. It's already gone. Motivations. I brought that to the table myself by reacting to what the world gave me. I believed in that character because I believed in my wants and my needs. In other words, my motivation. I didn't need to know his father's name or where I was from. It wasn't important to the narrative. If it were a movie, it wouldn't have shown up in the script. My second ever favorite character was a teenager named Lee, who was a part of a cult. And at the start of the adventure was when he realized he was leaving the cult, and I wrote pages of backstory for him, and it was awesome. Lee had thoughts that I never said out loud. His personality existed in my head as its own separate thing. He had doubts, anxieties, crushes. He surprised me all the time. I was discovering his sexuality and gender, hopes and dreams. I never would have gotten there without the backstory, because my work on the background elevated the story for me. But most other players at the table didn't think much of Lee. He was just Daði's sad boy cleric. They couldn't tell that I was hallucinating a whole person in here. It was just a tool that helped me believe in my character, a process I did so that I could have more fun at the table. Both of those ways work. There is no right or wrong way, just different tools for different jobs. If you're playing in a short campaign, or one that's more hack and slash, or maybe something that's just not that serious, knives might be wrong for you. It's possible your DM might not know what to do with the knives presented, especially if you never talked about knife theory. Like, talk to your DM. Send them the Reddit post and ask if they like the idea of knife theory. Because I think knife theory is a great way to make sure that your next character has unresolved issues, something to get stabbed with. Of course, the catch is that you, the player, must be excited about getting stabbed. If you don't actually want to get stabbed, don't provide any knives. And if you're the DM and you're interested in using knife theory, you have to be excited about stabbing your players with their knives. That's why they gave them to you. I, for one, love stabbing my players. That's why I always carry a knife.
Hey, watch it, buddy.
And that's where we're going to pick it up next time. This channel is run by me and my girlfriend. She would wave right now, but she's working hard at school. If you want to support us directly, come by our Patreon and pick up the newest issue of my monthly digital magazine, the Broadsheet. This issue has new species to play as various animal people in 5th edition. If you're feeling especially generous, you might like the video, comment, share, or subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when we release new videos. Until next time, keep studying the mystic arts.